Hello, I'm Jim, and welcome to Rallying in America, the Recce Podcast. This podcast is an exploration of a rich history, the stories and memories of those who made and make Rallying in America so great. Enjoy the show. Welcome back. On this episode, I talk with Daniel Hayes of Lost by Choice Motorsports. He talks about how he got started in rally, his team's Ford Mustang, his team's mission, suicide prevention, and the great American rally community.
Okay, I am ready.
All right, great. Yeah, I got home a little later than I thought I would. Yeah, so it's been a little hectic here too. So,
No problem.
yep. So Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you got into rally?
All right. Let me see. Where to start? Well, I guess we'll start at the beginning.
Sure.
So basically, I have always been passionate about automobiles. Throughout the years, I've held many different jobs, not all automotive related, but, still fun along the way. And then in college, in 2012, I went to Black River Stages with a couple of friends. Black River Stages in some small town in upstate New York, I think. And my goal was to film a rally driver by the name of Gary DeMasi.
Okay.
So we and my friends and I, college roommates at the time, all set out to film and interview him in conjunction with another friend of ours. And basically from there, my other roommates kind of came and went and such like that, but I kind of always stuck in the rally scene and was crew and volunteered up until, fairly recently on Gary's team, taking video and photography, running the social media and some other stuff for the V8 Rally Ranger, which is, Gary DeMasi built and I guess, engineered a Cobra 5-liter into a 87 or 88 Ford Ranger.
Oh, okay.
And took on some of the stages in North America with that throughout the years.
Excellent.
So, that was 2012. And then from there, basically, it was a little bit of a hiatus. We always stayed in communication, but I think the last time he competed, it was in 2018. If not, maybe a couple. Yeah, I think 2018 was kind of the last time he competed. And we always stayed in touch and everything, and all that good stuff. And then basically, one of our mutual friends' cars, which happened to be the Ford Mustang, came up kind of Gary facilitated him passing it along to somebody.
Oh, okay.
And that happened to be me. I showed interest and, there was always talk of, because we built this relationship over the years and everything, that, and I always jokingly wanted to get behind the wheel of the Ford Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a perfect storm of timing that this Ford Mustang became available. And, in what, 2023, Gary and I, spent the winter kind of, getting things up to ARA current standards
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
and trying to get that, ball rolling.
Excellent. And I think that's when I saw you at STPR, if I'm not mistaken.
It very well could
2023?
have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So 2023, we had, simple schedule, just try to get our feet wet and everything like that. So,
Right.
see
Very
where
cool.
my comfort level was. I never competed in stage rally.
Mm-hmm.
I never drove a rear wheel drive vehicle in my life. So to kind of put myself into that was certainly a learning experience, to say the least.
Right. I would imagine. Yeah. Um, so back with Gary, how much did you travel and what rallies did you attend? If I may step back, yeah, with Gary, how far did you
Oh,
travel
yeah.
on that with that team?
Basically, so from 2012 to 2018, I probably only missed two or three events throughout the years there, but we were pretty consistent to Black River Stages when that was running as a NASA event.
Okay.
We did STPR, that was our home event because Gary's from Northeast Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we did Sandblast Rally, a good amount of NASA events. I
Nice.
would say NASA was a little bit more popular back then with
Mm-hmm.
us, just because it was always a little bit more grassroots, and ARA kind of wasn't really cemented as ARA. It was kind of Rally America, and then it kind of dropped off, and there was kind
Right.
of that weird in between time. So we stuck with a lot of NASA events.
Mm-hmm.
What else? We did those, pretty consistently. So Black River Stages, STPR, and
Mm-hmm.
Sandblast were kind of the three. And then the one I couldn't make it to was when Gary went to Arizona with the team.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah,
So good amount of rallies. Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
so you
yeah.
at
Pretty
least
much.
gained some experience by at least being part of the team and going out and doing that. So
Exactly.
yeah, very
Just
nice.
kind of the ins and outs of how a team works and kind of, what it takes to, I guess, find people that fit a crew and team
Right.
nicely and can work together, and everybody has a job and they kind of know what their job is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because that's always, of any team, I think that's kind of mission critical.
Right. That chemistry is very important to have.
Yes.
Now, how about last year, 2024?
So,
What rallies
yeah.
did you hit with the Mustang?
So last year, I set my goal, or our goal, I guess it was a team goal,
Mm-hmm.
to compete in four events taking place through the ARA national schedule
Mm-hmm.
um, to try and place nationally.
Okay.
And basically, we started at 100 Acre Woods. Then from there, we went to Southern Ohio. And from there, we went to Tennessee. And then lastly, LSPR.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
So yeah. So you got around pretty well last year as well. So
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. That was kind of the goal. That was the
Yeah.
plan. And fortunately, everything aligned where at each event, my crew kind of rotates in and out.
Okay.
So we're able to keep a couple of core folk. but
Mm-hmm.
then we kind of pull from, volunteers and, people posting on Facebook that they're looking to jump in. And then
Right.
Gary, who is now my crew chief and mechanical wizard,
Excellent.
kind of vets them and, sees what their
Mm-hmm.
experience level is. But what he is really good at now on my team is bringing in upcoming students, and different people from different walks of life that kind of are trying to get started in this community.
Right. Right. Excellent. And then, what plans do you have for this remaining season? For
Basically, this year we're taking it easy.
mm-hmm.
I personally started a new job, and some other folk on the crew are going through some different life changes as well.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, we're doing, I think, just two events this year. We're going to hit Southern Ohio Forest Rally
Okay.
for an ARA event. And then we're also ARA national event. So we'll run nationally there. And then we're going to do STPR in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania.
Excellent.
Just run it as, a regional team and kind of get out there, get back out there as our, quote unquote home event. It's always nice. And especially since I know they've been working hard to kind of revamp it to get it back to a national level. So kind of show
Right.
them support. And
Yeah.
then hopefully I can find some time to do some more training. I'm very fortunate that I'm 2.5 hours from Team O'Neill,
Mm-hmm.
and my co-driver Boyd works with them closely. So he's trying to get me in that program just to kind of build on kind of what I've learned so far.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. So the Mustang. Can you tell us a little bit
Yes.
about Mustang and the build and maybe the year and so on?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So the Mustang, like I stated, I kind of inherited it from a colleague of Gary's,
Mm-hmm.
and it started its life as a track car. A full-blown track car that this guy would take to the track on the weekends, but still be able to kind of drive. Then in, I believe, 2015, 2016, this gentleman kind of started the process with Gary to convert it to a stage rally car.
Okay.
And
Excellent.
it first made its appearance, I think, at STPR as well,
Mm-hmm.
um, in around that time frame.
Okay.
Um,
Excellent.
and then basically from 15 to 20, there were maybe a couple of handful events, but that it competed in. But it really was more of it lay dormant for a little while.
Okay.
So then I think, yeah, 2022 is when I inherited it. It had, a combination of street parts or track parts, excuse me, and some rally parts.
Mm-hmm.
So Gary and I kind of went to work and finalized the conversion into a full-blown rally car.
Okay. Excellent.
But just, removing some things or tweaking some things. I was able to work with a company called Yellow Speed Racing to come up with some a little bit tweaked and customized suspension.
Okay.
On the
Nice.
front, running their setup, which is a gravel rally setup, which has really worked well,
Mm-hmm.
surprisingly well um, for the cost, I guess.
Right.
And
Right.
then we have a completely, based on the car, we have a completely custom setup in the rear for rear suspension to allow us to have more travel and obviously to raise the Mustang up quite a bit.
And get that clearance that you need. Yeah. It's very, very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we run pretty high on the ride height, mainly because it likes to under acceleration it hunkers down quite a bit.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very nice. So, why don't you tell us about Lost by Choice and the name and the cause that
Yeah.
you're kind of all about, which is fantastic.
Yeah. So, Gary, growing up, my parents, um, always wanted me to volunteer. We grew up in a household that, would go to soup kitchens and,
Oh wow,
volunteer our
awesome.
time as best as possible,
Mm-hmm.
to those who need it. And so growing up, I've always kind of had that, um, desire to help. And Gary, when I met him, was a survivor of a stroke, and he
Oh
found
wow.
motorsports to be therapeutic, to help him get back, not only motor skills, but also, you know, get him back working, back in the shop, get his brain functioning, a lot better,
Yeah. Oh,
and to
that's
overcome
amazing.
some of the stroke
Mm-hmm.
symptoms that kind of live with you. You live with them.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
so so he kind of always raised money for stroke awareness and the Heart Association and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So seeing that and how the community can rally around, a cause like that,
Mm-hmm.
to not be too much of a Debbie Downer, but mental health issues are pretty prevalent.
Yes.
Especially
Yeah.
in my age group and younger,
Mm-hmm.
and throughout the whole gamut of the age range. But um, so what I wanted to do with Lost by Choice Motorsports was to one come up with a name that kind of was different,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of pictured us as a different type of team. Kind of play on all who wander aren't lost type of thing. But I wanted
Right.
something
Right.
that was kind of, you could picture yourself standing in the woods by yourself and contemplating your life,
Yeah.
and how do you, come back from that?
Mm-hmm.
And not only have we built a team that fosters, adolescents and even adults that need that camaraderie, but
Mm-hmm.
also, to kind of bring to the rally community the tough conversations that some of us just need to have sometimes.
Right.
I
Right.
am
Exactly.
I am so fortunate to be in to have this, I guess, vehicle, literally a vehicle that
Mm-hmm.
I can kind of show off to people, but it's also a massive, icebreaker. If I'm at
Right.
a
Right.
park extra and something, and they look at the vehicle, they come talk to us.
Yeah.
It's easy conversation starter, and then you start to. Then they look at the livery and they look at the messaging that we have on the vehicle.
Right.
Right on the side of the fender, we have prominently, the lifeline number,
Yeah.
the
That's
national lifeline number,
very
because
cool.
we want to have that conversation with folks about, having a tough conversation.
Right.
This isn't, life is not easy, by any means, and if there is a way that I could promote a resource or provide a resource or some sort of connection to a resource,
Mm-hmm.
um, to people in areas that might not know there's resources.
Right.
I'm all for it, and that, working with the organization Hope for the Day, um, has allowed me to use them as a resource for, people that we communicate with.
Mm-hmm. Great. That's very cool. And I love on the back of your livery it says "Don't quit."
Yes, yes. That is not only a message for those behind us, but it's also
That's
a
right.
reminder to, us inside the vehicle as well.
Right. Right. That's
It
awesome.
kind of, it kind of brings that rally spirit, but, it also is always a reminder to myself as well.
Right. Right. Yeah, that is such an awesome thing to do, for your sort of cause and your
Yeah,
message. Your mission is just fantastic. Yeah. That's
it
why I
is.
reached out and I thought, wow, it'd be great, to have you come on and share your story and talk about
Yeah,
it.
definitely.
So speaking of your livery, um,
Yes.
I'm a graphic designer and I love your livery, the graphics. So it
Thank
does
you so
really
much.
stand out, and it's really cool. It's something special.
Yeah, we wanted, when I came up with it and kind of was looking at designs and thoughts on designs. Um, I wanted something. I've always been a fan of skulls and that type of motif,
Mm-hmm.
and I was really torn on how can I build logos and such around this kind of simple design that's on my hood, but transform that to something, excuse me, that is kind of a little wacky, a little out there. That's
Yeah.
a little cartoonish.
Yeah.
It's not. I didn't want something that was traditional rally. I wanted to. We're not in a traditional type of vehicle. We're not a traditional type of quote unquote team.
Yeah.
Where
Good point.
you're quirky. We
Mm-hmm.
wanted something. I wanted something that would stop people in their tracks, or not even make a good photo, but something that would start a conversation.
Right.
And
Right.
I think that design kind of blends well with attracting both young and old,
Yeah.
to not just because it's a Ford Mustang or anything, but they see the colors and such, and it kind of drives people to the vehicle naturally.
Right. Right. Oh yeah, definitely. Now, speaking of quirky and um, attracting attention, tell us about your tow rig, which looks like it's a
Oh
bus
yeah,
essentially, right? It's like a
yeah. So that
short commuter
is
bus, kind of a.
exactly. So that is an old Council of Aging bus from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation or something like
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
It is a V10 monster that is, as it can move a little bit, but it's moving a bunch of wind. So
Right.
inside that, basically we use it primarily as a tow rig. But for example, it took like 22 hours to get to LSPR. So inside of it, we have all the tools, we have the tires, and then in front of all that stuff,
Yeah.
we have two captain's chairs, a table, and then a foldable bunk bed setup.
Oh, awesome.
So we're very lucky that it's big enough to accommodate the whole team. We usually travel with a chase vehicle that turns into the recce vehicle,
Right. Okay.
but it is. I think it's. I think it now has like 360,000 miles on it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but that was Gary's brainchild. He was able to get it for really cheap, redo some of the flooring,
Right.
ripped out all the interior, and over the years we've added this, or, it has Wi-Fi, it has TVs, it has, a really nice sound system.
Oh, cool. Very
It's
cool.
it's super loud, there's
Yeah.
no insulation in terms of sound deadening. But it has a nice heater system.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've thrown in like a portable AC, like from like Lowe's or something at one point.
Okay.
So it's kind of like it's a really funky tow rig.
Yeah. So, do you have the Easy Right steering wheel cover on it?
No, no, this is it's one of those things where you need to be holding on to that steering wheel 24/7, because that thing, with all the weight in the back, and it has air
Yeah.
suspension and such, but it's
Oh,
still
okay.
a ton of weight. coming off of that front end. So
So
we've got it dialed in pretty nicely, but
yeah,
it's still it's still a floaty old rickety
yeah.
bus.
That's very cool. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that it's a lot of fun, and again, quirky and attracts attention.
Yes. Yeah. It's something that's they're ready. It's kind of like a team secret, but it's like it's a readily available, inexpensive mode of transportation.
Hmm.
But it's got a V10 engine. I mean, it can haul plenty of stuff and people.
Right.
You're not
Yeah.
going to get there. You're not going to win any races with the thing, but at least you're going to get there. You're going to be, on the way to LSPR. I probably slept 10 hours in the thing.
Right. Okay.
So you're going to be somewhat comfortable driving and also relaxing in it.
Okay. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
So, for folks to get a hold of you, I know on Instagram you're at Lost by Choice Motors, all
Yeah.
lowercase. And how can someone get a hold of you and find out more about your cause and hope for the day and some of the other
Yeah. So
things you mentioned?
we've got a full blown website. It's got some quirky merch on it. I'm kind of in the process of trying to figure out somebody that can make some plushies. I think plushies would be
Ah,
cool.
that'd be cool.
Basically it's lbcmotorsports.com, so
Mm-hmm.
lostbychoicemotorsports.com. Um, and basically there are links to kind of everything that we're doing in terms of events. There's links to our causes. There's links to complete layout of the build of the Mustang for most part.
Oh, okay.
And also, photos, videos, all that good stuff. I mean, we are on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. When I had a little bit more time and wasn't working as much, I would stream on Twitch, which I'm
Oh,
trying to
okay.
get back into.
Right.
You
Right.
know, I grew up as a gamer, so hopping on for an hour or two and talking to folks is always it's a fun time as well. So
Oh yeah, this was fun for sure. Chatting with you.
yeah,
We appreciate you coming on, and it was kind of funny when we did our kind of preliminary phone call. I found out you moved right next to the town I grew up in, which was
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
funny.
So I've always been in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Basically kind of floating around here, but Gary's down in Pennsylvania. Boyd, my co-driver's down in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
So we've always kind of been in this area, and I mean, it is one thing that Rally at least allows us to do is to go to these places that probably no one has ever thought of going to.
Right. Right.
It's absolutely wild. The characters that you meet in each community, but also just seeing the communities for themselves, because
Yeah.
that's
Right.
one thing American Rally doesn't matter the sanctioning body, but American Rally just puts you in areas that are so unique and so different from at least living in Massachusetts, or even traveling to
Right.
Pennsylvania back and
Right.
forth. Um, and you just people you meet along the way, and the different communities you get involved with. And I'd have to say, the I'm not the most outgoing person when it comes to the rally people, but
Mm-hmm.
what's been really nice is finding people that are kind of um, really as excited about us as we are of ourselves, and
Mm.
we can
Right.
both we can all kind of get excited about our cars. So like um, last year, it was Keenan Phillips and Icarus who we just fell in love with.
Mm-hmm.
We would all, because we were kind of going back and forth in times for National Open two-wheel drive, and we would always try to service next to them because they're kind of wild BMW was right up our alley with some of our crew and such. So, we were so fortunate to make friends with them.
Okay.
And for Keenan to actually help us at LSPR. And, anytime we could help them, we tried. Um, and then, I've been fortunate enough to meet other folk along the way. Even, as amazing as people like Travis Pastrana and such.
Mm-hmm.
Who remember us. It's kind of weird, and
Yeah.
ask about the team and such. And I've been working with another co-driver who is her name is Betsy, and she's actually a motorsports aspiring to be a motorsports
Yes.
psychologist. So
I've
we
talked to her.
connected,
Yeah. I hope to have her
and
on soon. Yeah.
yeah, she is. Oh my gosh, I did. One, I've done a couple of sessions with her,
Mm-hmm.
and not only has that helped, kind of get through some of the brain fog that comes up to an event, leading up to an
Ah,
event,
okay.
or also they call it the rally hangover.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of all of a sudden that wall of emotions that come at the end of a rally,
Oh, yeah.
bad or good, there's just like all that energy and excitement leaves your body, and it is incredibly taxing. So reaching out to somebody like Betsy who understands it
Mm-hmm.
from a co-driver's perspective and being behind the seat or about in the car,
Yeah.
um, you really can connect with these folks, and somebody like Betsy who can like talk you through things and kind of knows how it works,
Oh, yeah.
and
Very
kind of
cool.
comes up with game plans and such. So this community is so vibrant and different,
Mm-hmm.
and there's people from all walks of life, and I have to say, it is so enjoyable to meet these folks and learn about them, but also to have people that are kind of genuinely interested in what you are doing, you
Yeah.
know,
Right. Yeah.
and how you're doing, because I think, that sense of community, um, especially in motorsports, you kind of, you don't see it, in traditional motorsports. I only
Right.
sense
Okay.
this, from like the rally community, because I don't think if you're a star in NASCAR, they'd be, other teammates from other teams might be coming to you to, see how you're doing and such. But
Mm-hmm.
here in rally, it's built on, okay, how can I help my fellow competitor um, finish? Because it's all about just trying to finish.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I feel like when I talk with folks that you're kind of competing against yourself and doing the
Mhm.
time and getting through things. And other motorsports, it's I've got to beat this other guy,
Yeah.
or
Yes.
it's a different, you're still competing against each other, but yeah, there's less of a sense of you know
I
I
mean,
gotta beat this person and I'm gonna outdo him. And
exactly.
yeah,
And
it
and
seems a
what
lot
other
different.
what other real motorsports or even sports in general are you going to stand there at the end of an event with your competitors on the very last stage and take a selfie with everybody, or reach your
Right.
arm out and congratulate the guy behind you just for finishing?
Yeah,
I don't
that's awesome.
you don't see that a lot, and
Yeah.
that's kind of one of the very unique rally things that I think really, really builds a strong community and a
Right.
strong foundation for just sportsmanship in general.
Right. Do you think it's that community is, I want to say, stronger than maybe here in America with rally than it would be with like WRC, because it seems a lot more competitive. And I'm wondering that everyone compares American
Yep.
Rally with WRC, and I think, okay, that's okay, but I feel like American Rally is taking on kind of a identity of its own, and that it's okay not to be like the WRC, if I'm making sense.
Yeah.
Where you
No,
have a
I think
stronger
you're
bond between, that in that community. I don't know. I'm just kind of looking at it from, from my standpoint and on the surface. So I'm wondering if, somebody could tell me if, WRC has that same community or not. I don't know.
exactly. And, just from, seeing the different shows on YouTube and on the web of WRC,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, I think what we have in the ARA and NASA and the other sanctioning bodies is that kind of grassroots spirit
Mm-hmm.
that allows someone like myself in a Ford Mustang to compete, that
Right.
allows a Volkswagen Beetle to compete,
Right.
to allow, these quirky vehicles to compete, which brings in the imagination of do-it-yourselfers and,
Mm-hmm.
jacks of all trades that really just want to see what it's like to compete at something that's a little bit more out there than
Right.
your traditional track day. And I think what you see probably on the world stage, or I guess what is televised and what we see as
Right.
Americans, is something that's so highly competitive that we probably have no idea really. It's probably so we're getting such a edited view of it that
Right.
I don't, unless we went there and competed or went there and spectated,
Mm-hmm.
we probably don't really know what it's
Yeah.
like for a sense of community. But I bet they're not, the Travis Pastranas are not coming up to myself or anybody else and
Right.
complimenting
Right.
them on their wild build.
Right.
Um, and that's kind of where that American rally spirit is just, it keeps on flowing from
Mm-hmm.
person to person, and that's kind of what builds this community.
Right. Right. Totally agree. Yeah. It's a lot of fun, and it's going to be great to see how American Rally develops. And again, I'm a full
Yeah,
believer in um, let it take its own identity and go in its own direction, and kind of stop comparing it with other, the WRC and so on. I think it's
yeah.
okay.
I would say we can kind of mirror the regulations and kind of all the
Mm-hmm.
core fundamentals of rally that need to be to put on successful and safe events.
Right. Right.
We definitely need to work as a bigger body than just the American stage to ensure everybody is safe, from
Okay. Yeah.
competitors to spectators and such. So there's always that, I think we always need that safety belt
Right.
for
Right.
us.
I agree.
But I
Totally
think
agree there. Yeah.
that from a standpoint of grassroots, and I think that's where we're going to be able to strive as a community to welcome new people in and all that great stuff that makes us truly a unique motorsports in America.
Right. Right on. Well, thank you so much, Dan, for your time this
Yes.
evening. And you know, everyone seems to be so busy, so I really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you hopefully at STPR and
Definitely.
chatting again in the future. So, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much for the time today as well. This was awesome.
Oh, you're welcome. If you'd like to be on the podcast, you can email me, jim@jimboothdesigns.com, or message me through Facebook at Rallying in America, the Recce Podcast, or Instagram rallying _in_America. Special thanks to our sponsor for this episode, Brady Instruments, pro-grade, handmade, professional fuel hydrometers. Visit bradyinstruments.com for all of your fuel testing needs. And remember, don't be a fool. Check your fuel. Thanks to Toontank and the artist Nuclear Wave and their song In Drive for the podcast theme music.